All right, Diva, I am not here to coddle the collective. I am here to resurrect the truth about the divine feminine because we have been lied to. You have been sweetened and silenced and sold a version of feminine energy that is palatable for the patriarchy, but powerless for our purpose. So let me make this clear. The divine feminine is not weak, she is supreme. And we are reclaiming her not as empowerment, but as a justice. And so, somewhere along the way, we were taught that to be feminine, we needed to be nice, pleasant, gentle, agreeable, quiet, accommodating. It was subtle, sometimes sweet, mostly deadly. We were told to sit down, close your legs, be quiet, be good girls, and you were praised when you did. You were spiritualized into submission. Feminine energy began, focused on bubble baths and breath work, which is amazing. Breath work is amazing. But it didn't talk about the boundary setting and building worlds, the creative power. When you are tapped into the divine feminine, it's remaking. It's not here to be nice. It's here to be clear, bold, and undeniable. And I've been talking about this in a lot of my spaces. Feminine and masculine energy were never meant to be separate. They were actually separated in order to weaken the frequency of the earth. They were separated in order for one to be lacking the other. And so you have a generation and upon generations of men who are disconnected from their feelings, disconnected from their intuition, and only into the logic and it needs to be proven and etc. etc. And then you have millennia of women who are disconnected from their own safety, from their own security, from their own selves, their own power. It was all by design. But the truth is, what is necessary in order to bring this earth back to where it should be, oneness, is there needs to be an overcorrection that nullifies the separation. And that nullification starts now. The divine feminine is primordial. She is the void before the bang. She's the womb that creates entire galaxies. She's the river and the earthquake. She's not loud. She's commanding, but without ego. She's disruptive. And so when I say also without ego, for centuries, there have been so many beautiful, well meaning spiritual men that have been creating spiritual teachings that say you have the ego must die, ego death, ego death, ego death. Women who have been sacrificing themselves for millennia after millennia hear this and they kill their ego even more. And the ego is dead. It was already dead. It was already trampled on. It was gone. And so you'll see in my spaces, I'm like, girl, you need a little bit of ego. Like, you need a little bit of knowing who you are. You need a little bit of, like, I know I'm amazing. You need a little bit of, I'm doing this because I'm the bomb. And so it's not necessary. The teachings that were taught about killing the ego and doing all those things, a lot of those were needed for men because a woman's ego had already been destroyed. What if you need to connect a little bit back with some strong power? But I digress. That's another podcast. The divine feminine is back to rebalance the planet in joy, in truth, in power, in pleasure. And the lie that she's only nurturing and sweet and quiet is bullshit. It's colonial programming, colonial lies. It was invented to make sure powerful women stayed in their place. That sacred rage was buried, intuition was hidden, and joy was conditional on how everyone else felt outside of her. The divine feminine is a fire that clears fake, polite, and pleasing. She's a purification process. And so suppression was not an accident, it was an actual strategy. When you have an earth that's vibrating high, if we think about this Lumerian civilization and we think about the early Atlantis civilization before it was corrupted and tried to separate, it was a high frequency civilization. The earth was at a high frequency operating in high 5D. But once you separate and then create what is known now as patriarchy, you have to suppress the divine feminine. Why? Because you have to suppress creation. Because if you can't create in the way that the feminine is able to create, then the way you get to create is to control the feminine. And so it's not cultural conditioning and it's not the patriarchy doing its best. It was an intentional, systematic suppression designed to erase parts of you that couldn't be controlled. You can't rule a planet that remembers she is God. Before separation consciousness took hold, before patriarchy replaced unity, before colonization replaced collaboration, civilizations were led in harmony. Feminine and masculine energies were one. There wasn't a hierarchy, it was whole. You had high priestesses and priest kings. You had councils of wisdom, not single rulers of power. You had intuitive guidance, leading governance. And you had womb spaces created as sacred portals, not burdens. There was emotional data, strength that was softness, intuition, strategy. And then came the rise of force overflow, the rewrite. Intuition was branded irrational, compassion seen as weak, sensitivity became unstable, and anything coded as feminine became a threat. It wasn't just a loss for women and people in bodies that are feminine. It was a dismembering of humanity itself. The system silenced women and it rewired their nervous system to flinch at their own power, to fear a no, to apologize for yes, to confuse peace with politeness, strength with silence. It wasn't nature, it is programming. And let's be real. Let's be real deal whole of field. The erasure of femininity and of feminine energy didn't hurt just women. It left men cut off from the most essential aspects of their being. Without intuition, men are disconnected. Without access to compassion and empathy, they are performing protection, not embodying leadership. Without compassion, they are taught to help only when it's transactional, never because it is sacred. And the only acceptable emotion for men is anger. When care is labeled as feminization, quote unquote, when sensitivity is punished on little boys and dismissed in grown men, you get a society built on violence, not vulnerability, dominance, not dialogue, hierarchy, not healing. How many of you listening to this, did you watch Wicked? If you watch Wicked, you see Elphaba. Elphaba is a beautiful example of the divine feminine, and the world hated her for it. Elphaba, green, wild, powerful, emotional, was helping the voiceless. She was helping the caged animals, the ones that no one saw. And the leaders are like, why are you helping them? They're not your problem. Because they couldn't comprehend compassion that wasn't rooted in helping themselves. They couldn't understand helping someone who could never repay them. They couldn't understand love that wasn't performative. They couldn't understand a power that moved just because it could, not because it was transactional. And it's so interesting because those are the people in power. Those were the ones writing the rules. Those are the ones who call empathy emotional, compassion weak. This is what happens when a world without the divine feminine is left to grow. We stop trusting care. We stop respecting feeling. We stop knowing how to love without a receipt. And I'll never forget, after watching the Wicked, I started to see on a lot of the videos, there were a lot of people. There were, like, for example, men that were just like, I don't understand, like, why she would waste her time trying to help somebody. Like, that's their problem. They can fix it themselves. I was like, oh my goodness. Of course they would see it like that. So you have families, you have the father who's like, he doesn't get it. Why is she wasting her time? She should just try to grow and make a name for herself. You've got the mother that can't see past Glinda because she's so pretty. So of course Glinda has to be the victim, or she has to be the hero here because she's so pretty. And then you had the kids that were looking at their parents like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you don't see? Like, Alpha is the hero here. Like, she's helping. And they're like, why would she be helping people that she shouldn't be helping? And then the mother's like, but Glinda's so pretty and she's just so soft in her voice and so feminine. And it was just funny watching these kids like, Mom, what the hell are you talking about? They just don't get it because kids are at a higher vibration. The kids that are higher vibration are watching this movie and they see it. They see it. They see it. They see it in their society. They see it next to them. But you still have the parents that are stuck in the illusion. The mom sees a woman who looks like her, beautiful, blonde, just feminine as she had been taught to be, and she sees nothing wrong. She sees her as the one that should be lifted up. And then you have the father who also sees, why is this woman wasting her time? Her power could be used for so many other things instead of helping people that have no voice. This is what the divine feminine is eradicating right now. This is why you see systems falling and collapsing. This is why you see all of the chaos. This is why you have narratives like Elon Musk, empathy is the worst thing we could ever have, but then he's crying because he's losing money. You need to be empathetic to me. But thought empathy was bad, bro. This is why divine feminine is rising, because it needs to overtake and nullify the bastardization of your energy. It needs to bring you back to oneness. So you're not questioning, should I move or should I rest, and what should I do? I'm not so sure. This divine frequency of oneness is rising up in women first, because we held it in our bones and through lifetimes of suppression, because we buried it in our wombs and whispered through our art and coded in our bloodlines. But now it's returning through our voices, through our joy, through our businesses, through our boundaries, through our yeses, through our nos. She's rising in men as well. And it doesn't make them look soft. You can see men who feel whole, who can protect and who can lead, who also can step back and let another woman lead, who can hold space for their partner who is just as equally as powerful and doesn't need to overtake her or feel less than. What a man who's in his wholeness looks like is a man knowing when to hold space and not take space. Is a man who knows how to protect without controlling, lead without force, and love without needing to dominate or own. Because feminine energy isn't gender, it's a frequency. And the planet is done pretending that we can survive without it. So let me tell you something. Joy is justice. Let this be clear. Joy is not a luxury. It is a protest. It is a weapon. Every time you choose pleasure over performance, it's a recalibration of the power. Every time you say, I don't owe anyone softness or my softness, I don't owe it to anyone, it's a soul level revolution. I did a whole post on the soft girl versus the soft woman. And its biggest point was that when you are able to be in your power, you are free. Every time you lead with your truth and don't shrink when someone else decides that that isn't true, that's justice in action. That's the divine feminine refusing to play by systems she came here to collapse. Joy is part of that. Not because it's light, not because it's playful, not because it's airy, but because joy is what happens when a woman stops leaking power and starts living power. Pleasure is not indulgent, it is prophetic. It shows you the voice of you that exists without suffering as a precondition. It is when a woman can feel pleasure without shame, the system starts to collapse because she is leading from overflow, not obedience. So, what does divine feminine leadership actually look like? It's not about leading in weakness. It's so embodied in your truth and so unapologetic in your movement and so rooted in your joy that people feel your frequency before you even say a word. It looks like setting clear boundaries without explaining, sacred joy without guilt, unwavering standards without apology, creative fire without needing permission. This energy does not wait for proof. You declare, you decide, you own your desire. Not because you're trying to control, but because you are the creation itself. La Lumière is where feminine frequency reigns. It is so much more than a membership. It is a circle of divine remembrance. It is divine remembrance where your femininity, your power, your oneness, your complete energy is not filtered. It's where your light is not diluted. It's where it's safe for you to be loud if you want to, quiet if you want to. Where you already know you're worthy, where you feel joy of remembering you always were. Where you learn how to be sovereign and you embody fully your power. No more shrinkage, no more people pleasing, just whole, holy, and heard. And if this spoke to your bones, the link is in the show notes. Come back to your throne. You see, The world doesn't need more nice women. It needs more honest, powerful ones, whole ones, joyful, powerful, lit up, pleasure filled women. Look, I am not here to be polite. I am here to be divinity. Divinity in this body. God frequency in movement and action. And so if this episode hit you right in the heart, screenshot it, tag me, put it in your Instagram story. I am the aligned soul. And tell the world I am feminine, I am the divine, I am sovereign. Keep it bougie, stay healed, and be divine, Diva.